Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt in the Studio West. Every morning as I go up the implacable hill, I have the commentary podcast in my ear. And Christine Rosen is usually on that. She's the social columnist for commentary, a fellow at AEI. And Christine, I love this morning's podcast because you're talking about something near and dear to my heart. But first, let's talk about the brass-knuckled approach of the president. I loved your term. What do you mean by a brass-knuckled approach?
Well, I think, coming back for a second term, Trump, I think, has learned from some of his previous mistakes when it comes to how to be a president. I mean, it's actually a vastly important bureaucratic job in a lot of ways. And I don't think coming in the first time around, he understood that. He's very focused in this second term, whether you approve of all of his policies or not. And I'm somewhere in the middle. He does seem to be much more good at prioritizing what he wants. He came out of the gate on day one, just signing executive order after executive order. He wants his people in place. I think it's partly why he announced a lot of his nominees for the cabinet positions very early on. And really, quite frankly, I think it was a relief to a lot of Americans who felt like there had been a void at the top for many, many months because of Biden's decline in cognitive and physical health.
Now, the whole gang this morning talked about I'm about 90% with the president, but every president I'm going to disagree with some things. But I am most excited about the executive order repealing Lyndon Johnson's of 1965 and all subsequent related executive orders and memoranda, which basically depart from the 14th Amendment, the 1964 Civil Rights Act, where we make it unconstitutional and illegal by statute to either award benefits or inflict penalties on the basis of immutable characteristics. And John Podhoretz this morning sort of briefly adduced all of the great tumult. I don't know if you're old enough to remember Bill Bennett and Terry Eastland writing Counting by Race or the Bakke case or all of the fool. I've taught con law for 29 years, so it's all second nature to me. This is a breakthrough, Christine. And I think the Supreme Court that Donald Trump populated, is going to uphold this because we are to be a colorblind, gender neutral, absolutely non-discriminatory society. And that's what he did.
Yes, this executive order isn't radical if you think about what the public has been asking for and wanting for decades. And yes, you're right to cite all that earlier litigation. But I think particularly in the last 10 or 20 years, you've really seen both at the level of the federal and Supreme Courts with affirmative action in higher education in particular. And certainly when it comes to hiring practices in corporate America, this idea that we should no longer try to be a colorblind society that focuses on merit and equal opportunity, but instead we should be looking directly at race. We should be trying to achieve what's called equity instead of equality of opportunity. The American public correctly and soundly rejected that in this last election. So from both a legal standpoint and a cultural standpoint, I think this really is a hinge moment when it comes to race in this country. And I hope that it continues a conversation about how we as a multiracial society can figure out how to get along, not just legally, but as a country. It's important.
Now, I don't know who wrote this. Christopher Rufo saluted a number of people today. Donald Trump didn't write this. This would take a great group of lawyers many weeks to prepare. And it is very well written. I talked about it earlier in the program. Did anyone from AEI pitch in? Because this is it has the scent of Yuval Levin about it.
I cannot speak to that at all. What I will point out, one of the things in there that's really important is that it protects free speech. And,
Yes.
and this should matter to no matter what side of the aisle you're on, because one of the things it points out is that if you're someone who, for example, is a professor on a campus who really believes in affirmative action and race conscious hiring, no one is going to prevent you from arguing your case on that regard. What this will do, however, is disallow administrators who are ideologically motivated because of race to reject the best candidate simply because of the color of their skin. And that's important. That distinction is very important. So everyone still has the same free speech rights they've always had. But what we're protecting is meritocracy and equality of opportunity.
Do you think people will believe it? Now, this goes to your social critic role. In your book, The Extinction of Experience, you talk about a lot of the things that we become numb to and routinely accept. Counting by race is kind of second nature for millennials and the next two generations after them. Can they shake it off and get back to the original intent of the 14th Amendment as corrected by Brown v. Board?
I think they can, and here's why. They're a very skeptical, particularly Gen Z, but the younger millennials as well, have become skeptical of government's heavy hand weighing in on matters of identity. Now, there's an extreme progressive left, and actually younger women are still moving more left. But this recent election suggests that people are seeing that the pendulum has swung a little too far on a lot of these identity issues, whether that's about gender, whether that's about race. And this is important. So I think it will take some convincing culturally. The immediate aftermath has been so full of hyperbole from the mainstream media. I mean, we've seen reporters say, oh, they're going to bring back segregated water fountains. That's ridiculous. But also the younger generation looks at that and rolls their eyes, appropriately so.
Like J.D. Vance did yesterday to Usha while they were being lectured by the remarkably insignificant leader of a remarkably small group of Episcopalians at a beautiful building. I thought that was a wonderful conversation, but did you actually see the video of J.D. doing the side eyes?
I did watch that. I mean, that guy is sort of like a living meme. I love it. He was absolutely right, and I think quite restrained in his reaction. The idea that someone at a service that's really a civic moment, this is a moment where there's an opportunity to bring all Americans together, and she can certainly, signal some of her political leanings, but to scold the newly elected president of the United States, who came in, with having won the popular vote and having, taken over Congress with his party taking over Congress, it just seemed petty and small. And she immediately then goes on CNN, goes on The View, goes on shows where all of her political priors are enthusiastically embraced and endorsed. I feel just like the look on JD Vance's face, which is just sort of an eye roll. Yes, I had no problem with his expression.
30 seconds of the break. I want to come back and talk about birthright citizenship. The resistance is different from the deep state, which is different from the administrative state. We don't have a deep state. People don't knock on your door and you vanish. You don't get disappeared. But we have a resistance, and it's still there. Is it going to ever give up, Christine Rosen?
I think it's going to be a lot harder for them to do what they used to do under cover of darkness, as it were. And that's because you see a real shakeup coming for the bureaucracy. These orders about returning to the office if you're a federal worker, small things, those are going to add up to federal workers being held accountable.
I'm going to be right back with Christine Rosen. If you haven't read her book, The Extinction of Experience, you should go get it, and you should come right back to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. Christine Rosen has stayed with me for a short segment on birthright citizenship. President Trump issued an executive order purporting to revoke birthright citizenship. Wong Kim Ark was an American citizen who left the country and was denied entry in 1898. And the United States Supreme Court ruled, he gets to come in. He was born by legal residence in San Francisco, so he's an American citizen. Now, I actually believe it's settled that people born in the United States are citizens by stare decisis, but not by Supreme Court decision. I think, Christine Rosen, the president's executive order purporting to change settled practice, but not precedent, is a great gift to those born in this country by illegal parents, because it will be adjudicated by the court, and I think they're going to adjudicate it to say, they're covered by the 14th Amendment. What do you think?
I agree. I think it's interesting that, there is some legal wiggle room here, as you say, but I don't think there's going to be much debate from the court's perspective about whether a president can unilaterally just declare this. This is a sweeping statement, and citizenship is extremely, extremely important, and it's something the court has ruled on in all of its particulars over the years. So I agree with you, and I think in some ways it was Trump opening a door that has been left slightly unsettled. You have extreme anti-immigration folks on the right, you have open borders folks on the left. This is going to give the court an opportunity to actually very firmly state, here is what the Constitution means, here is what in practice we have done, and here is what citizenship matters. If you are born in this country, even to people who came here illegally, I suspect the court will say you are still, nevertheless, an American citizen.
That's my prediction. I think that Trump built a trampoline in his first term, the Supreme Court. He built an originalist majority on the Supreme Court. Now they're going to jump on it, and they're going to find out how high they go and how low they go. I just think this is kind of easy, and I hope that those who are born in the United States rest easy that it will be enjoined, it will get to the court. Do you think, this is predictive, Christine Rosen, do you think the Supreme Court will rush to get this adjudicated?
I think so. I suspect there are already cases about to be filed on behalf of, children born here to reflect this. I'm not a lawyer, so that's my caveat. But I would say that I think it's important for people to remember that although a lot of these justices were appointed by Republican presidents, including Trump, they have not always sided with the sort of populist conservative MAGA movement on a lot of issues. I mean, we see this most recently with the TikTok law, which that's another overreach on the part of President Trump that I don't think is going to withstand scrutiny. So just this court does not rubber stamp Trump, even though you often see that sort of narrative in the media. It is originalist, it is conservative, but even amongst the conservatives, they often disagree on matters of constitutional principle. And that's exactly what you want.
It is a constitutionalist court, and there are going to be disagreements. But I think the Commentary podcast is not neocon or con, it's constitutionalist, and I like that about it. Christine Rosen, thank you so much for joining me from the American Enterprise Institute, one of the regulars on the Commentary podcast, which goes up the implacable hill with me most mornings. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Arlie. Thank you, Generalissimo. Talk to you tomorrow, everyone, on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.